Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us here this morning for the webinar on KickSecure and the reporting functionality that we have here. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Stuart Beattie. I'm a senior principal consultant and deal in the KickSecure part of the Kick organisation. So this morning we've got a few things we want to go through. So we're going to start off, first of all, just by talking through some areas around what actually is KickSecure and why KickSecure has come into being. We're also going to talk around the requirements for cybersecurity, and that's really the kind of driver for why KickSecure came around. But the main reason we're here today is to have a look at the KickSecure reports, which you've all hopefully been getting. We've been sending them out for the past couple of months. And we're going to talk about what the report is, how to understand it, why we're sending the reports out, and what you can make use of the reports for. And then finally, we're going to talk about how we can then look at improving your KickSecure score. And at the end, we'll finish off with some questions and answers, just where we've got some kind of common questions that people have been asking us on a regular basis. So we'll hopefully cover off some of them. And we also have the chat functionality that's running here. So I won't be stopping to answer any questions as we go along through the presentation, the webinar. But if you want to post any comments into chat window, my colleague Beth is here who will be kind of marshalling those questions together. And then at the end, when we get to the Q&A session, I'm joined today by Ian Davis, who's the account manager many of you probably know. And between the two of us, we can hopefully come in and we can answer some of those questions for you and go through and get any answers to things we haven't covered hopefully today. So before we get kind of kicked off and talk about what is KickSecure, I just wanted to talk about the cybersecurity challenge that all the companies that we deal with and look after are having. So I think that you probably know and you've seen or heard from other people that cybersecurity is a real risk to everyone. And it comes from the smallest companies way up to the largest organizations. And it's maybe one of these things that people think, oh, take that with a pinch of salt. It's always happening to someone else down the road, and it's maybe not going to happen to me. But I can tell you that it's a real security risk, and it's almost a shotgun approach. So it's not particularly targeted, and it can be luck of draw as to whether you're the person who happens to get targeted and attacked. And if you happen to be attacked, it can have a real impact in your business. So have a look through some of the things that have happened recently that might kind of give you some idea of the kind of scale of what's happening out there. So just in the past couple of weeks, we had a giant hybrid attack against Ticketmaster, where they managed to steal 560 million different account details from their database. So from the fact of Ticketmaster, they've had a real reputational damage there. They are now the people who lost half a billion people's details out onto the net. And if you're going to buy some tickets from Ticketmaster, then obviously you're going to maybe think twice before you decide whether you're going to leave any personal information with them. So things like their marketing databases and so will start to take an impact. Another example that's happened, and which is still almost ongoing at the moment, was in London, where procedures had to be cancelled, and it had a huge impact in people's lives because they couldn't get the medical care they needed because of a cyber attack. In this case, it was a ransomware attack that happened. A few more details are coming out around that. What it seems to be was it was actually a supplier to the NHS trusts who was attacked. They didn't have processes and backups in place, and they didn't have a business continuity plan in place, so that when they actually got attacked and they had a ransomware attack and their systems were compromised, they didn't have a fast way to get back into business. Now again, as a supplier, a smaller company who's supplying to larger organizations, I'm sure that's something that your customers or your suppliers you'll recognize. And it's something that when you then come to renewal, people remember the fact that you were the person who had that cyber attack and you lost the service back from those people that you supplied to. So it's a major impact in your business. Now, the two we've talked about, Ticketmaster and NHS trusts, are obviously huge organizations. But it happens to everyone. So the attackers often use processes like looking through databases or looking through LinkedIn accounts or cyber breaches to get details of user accounts and then using those to then target other people. But it could also just be the fact that one of your users has clicked on a link that's been sent as a phishing email. And that can happen to anyone. So let's look at something that's a bit closer to home. So this was a hairdressing business based in Glasgow. They've got two premises, one in the West End, one in the South Side. So they had a cyber attack. They also suffered from ransomware, much the same as the NHS Trust. And what that meant was that all of their data was gone. They'd taken the leap, so they'd moved a lot of their business across to IT solutions. So they had an online booking system, they had all their finance systems and their financial information, and all their marketing information back in IT. All of that was encrypted, and they weren't able to access any of that. They were offline for a couple of weeks while they tried to get the information sorted back out. And they reckon that they probably lost about £30,000 worth of business just because people would be phoning up asking for appointments. They couldn't tell whether they had space available or not. So it was a real challenge to their business. In the end, it was a ransomware attack. They had contact details for someone in Russia. So they paid €1,000 to try and get their data back. So they got their encryption key back, they plugged that in, and they got some of the data back, but not all of it. So even to this day, they've still got information that they have missing. Of course, you pay your €1,000, but you don't come with any guarantee because we are dealing with cyber criminals here. So the threat is real to all the organisations out there. And we know that ourselves because we've had a few customers who've had challenges with cyber attacks where we've had to help either solve or clean up the situation after them or to stop from happening in the first place. So from talking about the threat, I just want to kind of go slightly sideways and just talk about a concept which we call defence in depth. And it's quite a simple concept. And the whole idea is that we want to put as many layers of barriers in place between you and the attackers as possible. The thinking here is that if people manage to get through the first defence you put up, because we all know that IT systems will eventually, someone will find a way through those systems or through those defences. So we put up multiple defences. If they get through the first one, they'll hopefully get stopped by the second one. And if they get through the second one, they'll hopefully get stopped by the third or fourth and so on. Now, why is that quite good? Well, obviously, it takes time to go through all those. If there's someone else down the road who doesn't have as many lines of defence, then hopefully they will become the person that they then attack. Or it could be that while they're trying to hack through those multiple layers of defence, that we can pick up a clue, maybe we can see something in a log file somewhere, or we can see some evidence of the attack in place, and we can actually step in and make some changes and close down the attack vector so that they no longer have a way of getting in. So just an example of what those lines of defence could be. So a really common example could be something like multi-factor authentication and logins. So the first line of defence is that you have a username and a password to log in. Now, if somebody stole that username and password through, for example, a phishing attempt, then that would mean that the first line of defence has been compromised, but they instantly hit the second line, which is multi-factor authentication, where the user might have to answer a question on their phone or type in a 6-digit code before they go through. And that could be enough to then stop that attack dead before they move on. But these kind of lines of defence, I just want to make another point as well, because we tend to get maybe sometimes caught up in all the fancy online systems and so on. All the legacy security you're used to using, your antivirus solutions, your firewalls, virtual private networks, they're all still part of the whole line of defence. So they all count towards stopping the attackers before they get to you. One thing I want to kind of just give a message around these lines of defence that we have is that obviously you're looking at what you can do to help increase the reliance or increase the security of your IT solutions and your IT systems. So no matter what it is you do, anything that you add as an additional line of defence is an extra level that someone has to hack through to get things doing or to get things stopped. So when we're looking at what we're going to do, don't get caught up in a whole or don't be paralysed by the fear that what you're going to pick is the wrong solution. Any solution that we put in place, and even small steps, could be enough to actually stop the attacker in their tracks before we move through. So now that we know what the challenge is, we want to look at what Kick's response to that challenge is. And we all know of the complexity of all the IT systems you have. So in years gone by, you'd have servers in the corner, and you'd be able to come in and use the workstations in the office, but now that's completely changed. We've all got a tangled web of cloud infrastructure and possibly solutions on-premise and lots of different providers we're using. The users themselves might be working from home, they might be working in the office, they could be working from a customer site, or they could be on the move. And it could be using a workstation, it could be using a laptop, it could be using a mobile phone, it could be using a tablet. So there's a whole complex challenge of trying to look after all these different systems and keep them secure. So we're aware of all these kind of different areas, and to bring that through, what we've done is we've created a new division, which is called the KickSecure division. So the KickSecure division, of which I'm a member, runs alongside all the other Kick divisions that you'll be used to dealing with, the technical dynamics, info and communications. And we work alongside them, just trying to make sure that everything we do internally for our customers is done as the most secure way as possible. So we're almost like the kind of security police internally. But on top of that, we've also been looking at all the customer systems and analysing how your customers are working and what your security is, and how we can help or aim to help you improve your security and get you to a level where you're less liable to be attacked. And on the back of that, we've introduced a range of services, and we're here today to talk about a couple of those services, the KickSecure Standard service, but also the KickSecure Premium service. And the Standard service is the one that relates to the reports which you get through. We also have a couple of other services, KickSecure SOC and KickSecure Consulting. And since I've got my friends or my colleagues from the account management online, I'd better actually just quickly go through and explain what some of those are. So the KickSecure SOC, it's not something that comes in pairs. SOC is actually an abbreviation for a Security Operations Center. So if you think, when you watch a movie and you see teams of people who are all sitting at banks of desks in a darkened room with giant screens as they're trying to stop hacks from going on. I've just been recently rewatching 24. It's kind of like that. So it's actually not so far from the truth. So we work with a third-party company called Rocket Cyber, who provide a security operations center service for us. Now that runs 24/7, and they have data centers dotted around the earth just so that they can always keep, as they say, work with the sun, and they'll always be available. And what we do with the SOC server is that we pull in lots of data from lots of areas. So we have agents we roll out all to your Windows machines, your Mac machines, and your servers. We pull in information from Office 365, from your antivirus solution, from your firewalls. And we pull all that information together and we look for patterns. So those patterns, we use some automated techniques using artificial intelligence to try and spot things that are happening, attacks in progress. But we also, through Rocket Cyber, have teams of professionals, security professionals, who actually look at the data, looking for attacks in progress. And what it means is if something does start to happen, that we can shut that down immediately and take machines off the network and off the internet. I like to think on it as maybe a security guard who's sitting in your office, who's monitoring the CCTV cameras, and who occasionally goes for a wander around just to check that all the windows are closed and that there's nobody lurking in the shadows, and raises the alarm if something goes on. On the KickSecure Consulting side, as before, if there's any information or any processes or any jobs that you need done, which have got a slight security slant, then we've got the individual team who'll be looking after that for you, and that's still available if you need us to come in and talk to you about that. On top of that, a couple of additional services that's always good to mention. We've got Know Before, which is a user education training. One of the things we always find is that as part of an attack, there's generally always a user who's done something that we really wish we hadn't done, whether that's they've clicked on a phishing email or whether they've used the same username and password from multiple locations. And Know Before just gives people a gentle reminder so that they are trained in spotting some of the major kind of signs of a phishing attack, and get some ideas around what good security practice should be, all in a nice engaging way. And we've also got Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, which is a government-backed certification, which shows that you as a company will take things on board and you'll look at security seriously. When you're talking to suppliers and also to customers, it's a really good thing to have because it proves that you're taking this security seriously, you know what you're doing. So let's talk about the final two. So KickSecure standard. So we know that the security can be quite a challenge for companies, especially companies who don't have their own IT resources on board. So we tried to look and see what can we do to make it easier for you to understand your security and to make proper and right decisions to help you keep your business safe and secure. So with that in mind, we looked at kind of different options that are around and what we can do. And we thought the best way would be to provide a security score. So almost like a kind of list of a tick box or a kind of number that you can actually get on that says, okay, this is how good or bad our security is, and breaks that down into areas so you can then decide, well, we really need to maybe spend some time and effort on this particular area to try and improve security here. And it allows you to make more informed decisions. So the whole thing about KickSecure is really to give you the information you can need to help you make decisions. So KickSecure standard is available to everyone, but we think it's important enough that if you've got an existing support arrangement with us, so if you're one of our support customers, we're giving you this standard service as free as part of your support service. And hopefully, all of our support customers should have started to receive your monthly emails through with the scores and the link to the portal where you can view that. And if it's not, we're going to show you today how you can access that and get online. So talking about the KickSecure score, what actually is this number and how do we dream the number up? So we looked at the various options that are available from the marketplace. So there are already some companies who will give you some scores. The best and best known of those is Microsoft Secure Score. So you may or may not be aware of this, but if you go to your Microsoft admin portal and click around into the right places, you'll get a number from Microsoft, which is an idea, and again, a kind of gives you an indication of how secure your systems are and how well configured they are. That's actually used quite often. You'll probably see that when you try and fill in a new cyber insurance claim, or not actually a claim, but when you bring out a new policy, one of the questions they'll ask you is, what is your current Microsoft security score? So we looked at that and decided, could we use that as the basis for the KickSecure score? And we realized that it is good, but it's very Microsoft centered. So they generally only look at Microsoft products. And to a certain extent, they also try and use it as a way to push you to buy and get on board with new Microsoft technologies and new licensing arrangements. So we thought, that's fine, we'll take some up, but maybe there's something we can do that's a bit better. So next we looked at a place called the Centre for Internet Security, or CIS. That's an independent organisation. It's very well thought of throughout the IT world. And they provide baseline documentation of what the best security baseline is. And they do that for about 25 or more vendors and hundreds of different software packages. So we looked at that and we took some of their ideas and integrated that into our into our KickSecure score. Then we also looked at our own staff and our own systems internally. We've got 100 odd people here who've got great experience of supporting hundreds of customers. And they've seen many things, they've seen many attacks, they've seen many problems. So we've also grabbed all them, we found out from them what they think the most important security areas are, where we should concentrate your experience to help you provide a more secure environment. We've combined them all together. We score all your environments against that, and then that comes out as your as your KickSecure score. So currently, we've got 90 different metrics that we score against, but we're continuing to add more. So the important thing about KickSecure is that it's a process. So as we move through and as we change things, that number will change because we continue to add additional metrics. So at the moment, we are concentrating primarily on your Office 365 environment and partially on your local Active Directory and some of your servers. We'll be adding additional functionality and additional metrics, which means we cover more and more of your systems as we move through. So what does the number actually mean? So if you looked at the score, generally it's a percentage number. So a lot of people will see the number and the first thing they think is, well, why are we not 100%? So first thing I'm gonna say is, don't expect to be at 100%. No one has that. So let's talk about what 100% actually is. So to get to 100%, you're at the level of maybe a kind of security organisation or a bank or building society. And when we look through, for example, the CIS benchmarks and the Microsoft Secure scores, some of the things or some of the recommendations they make to have a really secure system means that you actually have to disable some of the functionality that your end users actually rely on. So, for example, if we came back and told you that you couldn't now use Microsoft Teams to have conversations with external parties because that's more secure, I think you'll probably find that most of the people in your organization would come back and say, well, that's how we do business, we can't do that. So the main thing is a lot of the time that you won't want to get, or you wouldn't get to 100%. And in fact, the kind of scores that we're getting at the moment is our current average is 37.9% across all our customers. We'd like to double that though. So our aim and what the kind of number that we want to try and look at is around 70%. So from your scores, 70% for us would mean that you've got a reasonably secure environment in place and you've ticked a lot of the boxes that do that. But if the score you've got is low, don't panic. So there's a lot of things and probably quite simple steps that we can do that can help you increase your score and get that moving up towards the 70% as quickly as possible. And a lot of them won't actually cost any money. So they're probably included in your license fees. And the biggest thing, for example, multi-factor authentication, some of the email security that we have in there, quite a lot of those, and you'll all be outlined and you'll see what details of those are in the actual score and report when you look through those. The other thing I want to stress in here as well, don't get fixated on the actual number itself. What I would say is you want to look more at the trends. So if your number is starting to go up, then that's good. That means that you're putting more levels of defense in place, so there's less chance that you're going to be attacked. Where it starts to worry is if your number starts to come down, that means that maybe something's gone wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that anything's changed on your end. It could just be that we've added additional metrics that's giving you a more holistic view of your whole organization. But it's maybe time that you maybe want to do some work to try and raise that score back up again. So I've been talking about scores and mentioned the fact that you should all have had an email through. So how can you actually access the score? So the emails we send out are based on a list from our CRM system. So we have a system where we mark people as being technical contacts. So anyone who's a technical contact should be receiving the emails from us. If you're not, then come back to us. We can sort that for you. We can have the correct people added into the list. But there's also a link. So the email you get through has a link which comes you to the portal, and the portal is actually the main area where you can access the reports. And you can get those that are updated on a daily basis. So you can refresh that every day just to see what the changes to your score are. So the URL for that, https://portal.kickict.co.uk/reports. Now, when you open up that web page, the first thing you'll be asked to do is to log in using your Office 365 credentials. Now, the portal we put together, we've made it in a very secure way to make sure that there's no data breaches and nobody can steal any information from that. One of the ways we've done that is we've used Office 365 as the login so that we as Kick never actually get to know your usernames and passwords. So it's signed in using your existing Office 365, and it means that we also tie into your multi-factor authentication and so on. The other thing I should mention is that anyone within your organization can actually log in and see what the top level score is, but some of the information that's in there is limited. It's only viewable by the people who are the technical contacts, so the people who can get through the emails from the CRM system. So again, if you log in, I'll show you what the portal looks like in a couple of seconds. If you log in, you don't see all the additional details, then come back to us. We can get that sorted out for you. Come back through your account manager or contact us here at KickSecure. So I've got a couple of slides here, which just takes you through, but let's actually just be brave and try and go for a live demo here. So I have my browser. Now I'm logged in as a KickSecure demo user. So let me just fix this, and I'll go to my browser, type in the URL, portal.kickict.co.uk. And we'll see as you do, the first thing that will happen is it's asking me just to log in. So I'll log in with my admin account. Now, I'll point out, I've already logged into this, which is why it hasn't asked me for my multi-factor authentication, but we do follow best practices. The KickSecure demo tenant does have MFA set up. But it takes you straight in so we can see the secure score on the screen. So in this case, we can see about 51.8%. So our demo has a bit of work to do to get us up to that magic 70%. And you can see that breaks down and it's calculated out of 319.3 points, or 319.3 out of 617. We also pull some additional information though on this page just to make things a bit easier for you. So we also report back what your secure score is, and we update again this on a daily basis. So for example, if you're filling in your cyber insurance form, this is an easier place where you can come in and get your score, in this case 53.55. Just a point is the Microsoft Secure Score, it breaks down into individual areas. So they'll give you different scores, for example, identity, which is all the login stuff, you know, the MFA, data, which is your storage and applications. And you may also, depending on licensing, see devices list in there, and there can be a fifth item as well. So we give you the individual scores again so that you can see how those break down. What's probably the best thing to look at here though from the KickSecure score is what the top 3 recommendations are. So we take the individual metrics we spoke about earlier on, and then we've tried and figure out exactly what is the ones that you should be trying to concentrate on, which will give you the best chance of improving your security. Now you can see here that we've got 3. I can gain 12 points by ensuring all users complete MFA. I could gain 10 points by branding the login page, and I could gain 20 points by putting a modern authentication for SharePoint applications. So everything we have here, I should say the scoring mechanisms, and we'll see that later on, we've scored each of the metrics between 1 and 20 points, with 20 points for the ones that we consider to be more important. But in the top 3 recommendations, we really present the ones that we think are the most important ones. So it might not always give you the highest score improvement, but it will give you the biggest security improvement. In this case, the multi-factor authentication is actually scored out of 12. So at the moment we're scoring 40%, but there's an extra 60% of those marks we can get back. So that's the ones we want to look at. Scrolling a little further down the page, we'll get to the top level where we can look at all the different areas. So much like the Microsoft Secure Score, we split all the scores into multiple different kind of sections. What we did here was that we put together this web page. We got our web designers in, they put this together, which we thought looked amazing. What we didn't realize was we didn't actually tell people that a lot of these you can actually click in and get a lot more detail. Now, I mentioned earlier on that some users won't be able to get the full detail. So only the functionality I'm about to show you here, where we click in, is only available for people who are technical contacts or listed as technical contacts. So again, because there's some potentially confidential information in here, we make sure that it's not available just to anyone in the company. But when we click in here, we'll see that you get more details around all the individual scores. So they're all pretty much the same format, so I'll just talk you through exactly what we see. So first section we get is that we get the scores. So you can see in this case we've got 0 out of 20, 0%. We also organize this so you'll get the worst scores, or the scores that you could gather with more, or where you could get the biggest gain points towards the top. So it sometimes looks a bit kind of worrying because you open it up and then you end up wondering why you're not seeing anything that could be improved. So it's always going to be at the top. When you go back down towards the bottom, you'll get the ones which are scoring 20 points and give you a better result. We also got the subject, so the ensure unused accounts are disabled or deleted. For those of you who are in the IT department or who know a bit about IT, that link is actually hyperlinked. So that will automatically take you into the Office 365 portal, which will then show you where the disabled accounts are, or down here, for example, will take you into where the modern authentication for SharePoint applications. It will take you into the actual page where you can see that setting and decide what you want to do. The next function you get, we actually give you some details around how we've scored this. So in this case, we can see that there's a user, David Payne, admin account, who hasn't logged in for 285 days. And under that, we give you some reasons as to why we're using this as a score. So in this case, the user haven't logged in for more than 90 days. We've seen this happen where users have left the organization, it hasn't been fed back as a help desk ticket to us, so we haven't disabled the account. And then several months later on, someone's got details of that user account and then used that as a way to log in and attack the organization. So again, we flag that up as one of the secure scores. Now, further down, and let me just go into a different section here. We'll see you get a few more details, and what appears in this section here, it's almost kind of internal information, but it's quite useful for you. First of all, we tell you whether or not this particular score is linked to either Microsoft Secure Score or comes from the CIS recommendations. And in those cases, we'll tell you exactly where that comes from. So for example, the access reviews for guest users comes from section 050101 of the CIS 365 Foundations for Office 365. We also tell you a bit about whether or not you have the licensing in place or you've purchased the services that are required in order to actually turn this on. So we can see here that this check requires an Active Directory P2 license. So if you actually wanted to get those points and to enable this functionality, you would have to then go and buy an Azure AD P2 license in order to be able to turn that on. Now, we've got access, so we pull through your existing licensing. So if you have the licenses in place, we won't flag that as an issue. We will just tell you that that can be turned on and you can do that. So it only appears where there's a licensing issue that's stopping you from doing anything. And the final bit at the bottom here is that we tell you whether this is included in the KickSecure Premium license. Now, we'll go through and we'll show you some of the KickSecure Premium, or talk about KickSecure Premium in a moment. But that's basically where that we will take on a service and we will help you to fix and remediate all the issues that are here. What you'll also see though is in some cases, for example, if I come into here, let me just find one that's set up. Sometimes you'll get, for example, here where it says including KickSecure Premium, but may disable features used in your organization. So in that particular instance, we will talk to you about turning this on, but it might actually be used by some users within your organization. So we don't want to turn that on and then have users coming back and saying, this is now broken, this thing is working, I use this in business relationships. So we give you the option as to whether we want to turn that on. Now, we'll talk about the KickSecure Premium later on. One other proviso I just want to mention as well, where we say that we will fix something, we'll generally turn on the basic configuration. So for example, we will help you set up multi-factor authentication as part of KickSecure Premium. But if there's any customizations that get done, that would have to be done as part of the KickSecure consultancy services. Okay. One other thing which you just need to break, if I just go back into this here again, if you scroll down to the very bottom, just while we're talking about KickSecure Premium, you'll see there's a little bit here which is tagged on the bottom. So it tells you when the last time the report was created, which gives you an idea of when the last time we refreshed the data. But we also tell you what the maximum score would be with the current licensing that you have in place if you took the premium service. So in this particular instance, we can say that we'll get you to a guaranteed 64.34% with the premium service. So you can have a look at that yourself. The demo account we've got here has got some limited Microsoft licensing. So generally we bring you up to around the 70% mark. But again, if you can check your own individual reports, you'll see how that could work. So the next question people generally ask is, how can I improve that score? So hopefully by now you realise that you don't want to get to 100 because we're never going to get there. But we did mention earlier on that we really want to try and get people up to the 70%. So how can you get yourselves up to the situation where you can improve your security? And bear in mind that this isn't just about getting the number up to make it look better on reports. Every time we improve something as part of your KickSecure score, you're adding that extra barrier, that extra defense in depth. So an extra level or an extra something that people have to break through to get through there. So the ways you can improve the score, well, first of all, if you have your own IT staff, as I mentioned, we've tried to make it as simple for you as possible. So all the headlines in the report are hyperlinked, so they can click on that and it'll take you into the admin portal. The one proviso on that is if you don't have your own IT staff, you might be tempted to click on the links. It can cause more damage if you change some settings that you don't know and you don't understand what the consequences could be. Also, some of the settings can be quite complex in how they should be set up properly. They take more than one, it's more than just ticking a box. You need to then go through and configure things. So it can be difficult and it can be dangerous if you make the wrong choices. And what you'll probably find is that you as a user won't have permissions to do a lot of those changes anyway. You'd have to come back to us to get the permissions added. So a much better way is to allow us to help you, and that's where the KickSecure Premium service comes in to help you improve the score. So the customers we have at the moment have experienced an average of 20% increase in their KickSecure score from when we bring the service on. And you can see the graph at the side there. So at the moment, the premium average is 58.4%. Now, at the moment, we have a lot of customers who've just joined, which means that it's bringing the average down until we get through and we bring them up to the full running speed. But you can see the dotted line in red shows one of the customers we have, one of the first customers to run through. So you can see they quickly jumped up and they're now running around 76, 77% for the KickSecure score, which means that they're a much higher level of security and much more capable of surviving an attack from a cyber attacker. So the KickSecure Premium, what actually is that? So we build on the core of the KickSecure standard and the reporting functionality. As I mentioned when I went through, and if it says at the bottom that we will resolve the issue with the KickSecure Premium, then we'll automatically tick the boxes and make the configuration changes needed to fix that particular issue. But there's more than that we just give away with the KickSecure Premium. We also do vulnerability scanning. So there's two levels here. The first level is that we look at your external network and we push our scanners. We try and attack your network and your web servers to see what we can find and see if there's any particular issues with how that's configured. Maybe you've got an out-of-date bit of software that's got a vulnerability, we'll pick that up. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, the whole thing with KickSecure is to give you visibility of these things. We'll come back to you and say, okay, we found an issue, let's talk about how we can then resolve that issue and what's involved. It could be that you have to have some consultancy to maybe upgrade some software. It could be that it needs to be patched. It could be you need to change some firewall rules, but at least we've got visibility of the issue, which means that you've got a chance to stop it before someone can then take advantage of it. We do a similar thing. We also push out a vulnerability scanner to all your Windows devices and also to your Mac devices on your networks or your workstations. And that allows us to check and see whether there's any software on those devices which could have potential issues. Now, sometimes it's software which we'll be patching. So the service desk will actually be patching things and maybe it's just a little behind. Some of the customers we've found just now, we realised that we're patching the machines, but users aren't rebooting the machines quickly enough. So there's some patches which aren't being caught up again. But we can also find, for example, that maybe you've got a line of business application that you look after, maybe a finance application, which maybe isn't at the most up-to-date version. So it's not covered by our automatic patching as part of the service desk, but it's maybe something where you need to think about upgrading to a new version. So we can look at that. We can tell you what vulnerabilities are there, what the potential issues around those will be, and it allows you then to make logical decisions as to what you want to do. So it could be that you decide that you want to upgrade to the latest version of software because that fixes the issue. It could also be that you just decide you want to put a mitigation in place. So you know that there's an issue with a particular bit of software, it's very expensive, you don't want to spend the money on it just now. So maybe you say, well, we'll add a rule and we'll tell staff that we can only run this when we're inside the network because we're protected by the firewall and protected by other systems we have in place, but that you can't use that software when you're, for example, working from a customer site because there's a potential that someone could then attack that. So that would be an example of a mitigation that's in place. The other things we give in KickSecure Premium is auditing of all the logs. So as part of the ISO benchmark, they have a list of about 10 log files in Office 365 that should be checked on a regular basis. And just by checking those, we can pick up on, for example, a user who's been given an elevated account, which could be the first sign of an attack in progress. Because attacks don't just happen over 24 hours. Sometimes they can be planned and can run over several months. So by catching all these things in the audit, we can get early signs and we can close things down and resolve the issues before they become an actual attack. We also look at advanced email security for you. So some of you may have been aware or been hit by the fact that Google and Yahoo put a requirement early on in the year where they wanted people to have a thing called DMARC in place in their email security. Now, the DMARC solution or the DMARC protocol comes in 3 different levels. It comes in a report, but then there's quarantine level and there's a reject level, which are the next levels up. They said they just want it to be in the report mode only, but we're fairly sure that now that one person or one company has broken cover, that other companies will start to come out and start to request or require that you have an extra level of security before they accept emails from you. So as part of the KickSecure Premium, we'll go through and we'll set up the email security for you. So that's 3 services called SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. What that means from you is that it means it's more difficult for people to pretend to be you and send emails out. So a lot of times, part of a phishing attempt might be that an email comes in that appears to come from your domain, and people trust that because they think it's came from you. And it could be they click on a link and try and log in somewhere, but it could be something financial as well. For example, the kind of sample of it's your boss, I'm out of the office at the moment, I need to get some Apple iTunes cards bought, can you buy them because we need them to give to someone, that type of thing. So advanced email security means that we can lock down the email to make it much more difficult for people to do that. And the kind of final area we add in there is for dark web scanning. So we will check through all the email accounts you have just to see whether or not there's any users have the passwords out in the web. Because as much as we always hope that users use a different password for everywhere, I'm fairly sure that there'll be some users who use the same password for their Amazon shopping account is used to log into their systems on the network. So that's the KickSecure Premium. And if you're interested in how we can improve your KickSecure store by moving up to Premium, then talk through and have a conversation with your account manager, and we can get you some pricing around that. So now we're into just talk about some of the frequently asked questions. So I've got 3 questions that we quite often get here, and then I'll open up to everyone who's here. So if you want to put your own questions in, put them into the chat window just now, and myself and Ian will try and answer them towards the end of the session. So first question we always get is, why did my score fluctuate? It was at 42% last week and then it went down to 41%. What's going on? So we recalculate the scores on a regular basis. Some of the systems are done automatically overnight. Some of them are done on a weekly or a monthly basis, depending on what the score is. So a couple of reasons why the score could fluctuate. It could be a new user's been added and the user just hasn't had a chance to set up their MFA yet. So if you've got 100% coverage for MFA and that drops down, give it a couple of days. If that user then sets up their MFA, it'll probably jump back up again. We've also seen other situations where users have been deleted. So you delete a user account who has MFA set up, and that suddenly then, because of percentages, it skews the score, so your score comes down slightly. Another thing is that, as I mentioned earlier on, the scoring mechanism is a living mechanism, so we add and change things on it quite often. So it could be that a new metric's been added which you don't meet the requirements for, so your score jumps down slightly. I mean, it could be that you meet the requirements for it and your score jumps up again. It could be a change to Microsoft licensing. So Microsoft tend to change what the licensing include on a regular basis, and sometimes things drop out, sometimes things get added in. So it could be that you've either bought or you've cancelled the license, or Microsoft have changed what's included, and that adjusts the score again, what's going through there. And again, the final thing is that the manual audits we do can sometimes refresh the data, which means that you get a more accurate result, more up to date, but it does mean that the score can change. If you really want to know what the changes have been, get in contact with your account manager, and we have a function where we can export a report that shows you what's went up and what's went down. Longer term, we hope to have that available on the screen so you can see that yourself. Bear with us, it's a moving project, so the web page that you see does or will change on a regular basis. The next question we quite often get is, can I print out or export the report? So this is one where we're aware that there's an issue when you try and print the report, that you only get the high level, top level scores. When we got the graphic designers in to do the work, we thought, oh, that looks lovely. Nobody actually thought to hit the print button. We're a kind of pretty much paperless office here. so we never actually tried to export that again. We're working with that, so there will be a redesign where when you hit print, you'll have an option that will print all individual scores for you. In the meantime though, when the new batch of emails with the scores go out, which should be next week, we'll supply a new option on the screen. It will be down towards the bottom where you'll be able to click and it will download an Excel file, which will then allow you to get an export of all the scores, which again is probably quite useful because then you can use that to do some planning and so on. The kind of final question I've got here is if I buy the premium service, or if I get the subscription to that, how long does it take for my score to improve? So the short answer is as soon as we get the order through, we'll start working on things for you. Obviously, there's a few different areas around there. So there's the vulnerability scanner we need to roll out and configure. There's the DMARC DKIM SPF we need to configure. But there's also the work on improving the security score at the same time. And generally, we say that it will take between 1 and 2 months before the score will get up to the level that we guarantee it will get to. So a couple of reasons why that is. First of all, although we don't expect any major changes or any changes we make to have major impacts, sometimes it can have an impact and a user has to raise a call because something they were doing or something they've been using has stopped working. So we do it slowly to make sure that if there's anything that happens, it gets reported back, we can track it down more quickly and figure out exactly what it is. The other thing is though that some changes just take time to fix. So for example, if we enable multi-factor authentication for you, that won't automatically just get turned on overnight. Well, it does get turned on overnight, but we need to wait until the users have logged in. So people who are maybe out of the office or working shifts or on holidays can take time for that to build up and automatically start to improve the score up to top level. Okay, so I think that's the questions we've got. So I've got a few questions just been posted into the panel here. So the first one, we subscribe to the monthly security service and you offer and get the report. Does premium standard replace or the monitoring service, does premium standard and premium replace this? So there are a few customers who have the report where we do the vulnerability scan against your external systems. So that function is still available if you want to, but what we've done is we've taken that service and we've added that in, so that's now part of the premium service. So if you take the premium service, then you'll get that as along with the internal vulnerability scanning and the resolution of all the remediation of the things that will fix as part of your score. Okay, so once KickSecure report has been reviewed, how do customers get in touch to share changes to be made to the admin center? So I guess from that one, it means that if you made some changes yourself, how do you let us know that you've made those changes? So generally you can email through to one of the KickSecure people. We've got a mailbox, so the email address that the report comes from, you can reply back to that. It's not monitored actively, but someone does go through it on a daily basis just to pick up any emails. So if you tell us that you've changed something, then yep, sure, we can go through and we can redo the manual auditing, which will then update the report and bring it back into what you've just fixed. So somebody's saying with the premium, the customer see a copy of the reports that have been run and observations make or the work carried out. So at the moment, we just have the KickSecure report, so you'll start to see that the score starts to tick up as we do the work on that. We do have an internal database though, so every time that we make a change, we will then put a comment in so that we can say we fixed this or we've had to do work on X, Y, Z. So we don't have that available on the portal so that you can see that. But if you want to come back to us, then we can run an export from the database to let you see exactly what's there. Some of the parts in the report, in the KickSecure report, there were actually text fields. So, for example, some of the manual auditing areas, the person who's doing the auditing will fill in some details, and that will actually appear as part of your KickSecure report. So you'll be able to view it on the page. As showed earlier on, where you've got the heading, and then there's 2 paragraphs. It comes in as the first paragraph there, so you can see some of the details. Just going through, I've got a list of questions here. I think I've hopefully answered all the questions that are there. So Any other questions, if you want to pop them into the chat window just in the next couple of minutes. And if not, then we can move on, and thank you for your time. Ian, who's looking in the background, has also just kind of pointed out that as part of your account management meetings with your own personal account manager, they'll actually go through the report with you, so they have access to the report, and generally before they come have a meeting with any of the customers, they'll come back and talk to us in the KickSecure section, just to say, you know, is there anything that's of highlight that we should talk to the customer about? So you can certainly bring that up with your account manager, and they'll act as a conduit between us, but they'll also provide you some feedback as to what's happening with the report. Okay, can't see any more questions coming through at the moment. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time. Appreciate that it can be quite busy for people to come and spend an hour with us here. So hopefully you found it useful. And if there are any questions, feel free. The recording that we made today will be made available as well. So you'll have that through if you've registered for the webinar. You'll get a link through to that. Again, if there's any questions, come back via your account manager, or you can email me as well. It's stuart.beattie@kickict.co.uk. Thanks for your time.